Today we go to Germany. Germany has, for most of its history, been on the forefront of cinema as a kind of art in the world. In the early silent era, German filmmakers were among the most innovative, really pushing the boundaries of editing, camera angles, camera movement. And there was a real style of German expressionism where they would sort of exaggerate the settings, the lines of buildings and that sort of thing to give them these strange, otherworldly, uh, psycho, psycho, I don't know, psychotically strange landscapes that these films would take place in. And then, of course, Germany fell to the Nazis. And during that dark period, the Nazis controlled the entire film industry, and they actually produced a ton of films, some of them very, very racist, anti-Semitic, and then, of course, a lot really building up the state and a lot of escapism type stuff. And then after that, Germany gradually kind of came out of its shell and started producing more artistic works. And one of the forefront directors of this change in German cinema is a film director named Rainer Werner Fassbinder, who is a singular force in the history of filmmaking, a very incredibly productive director. In just 13 years, he did almost 40 movies and TV shows, including one really long series called Berlin Alexanderplatz. He died in the early 80s of a cocaine overdose, and a big loss to the film world because he really pushed the boundary of filmmaking. He began coming out of experimental theater, and his early films were really very strange and experimental. I find them sort of difficult to follow. And then about a few years into his career in the early 70s, he went to a film festival that showed a bunch of films of Douglas Sirk, an American, actually a German director who went to flee the Nazis and came to Hollywood and made a number of Hollywood films. And what he saw in these films is that you could take the formula of a Hollywood film, the melodrama, and tweak it in such a way to turn it into a kind of social commentary. And today we're going to watch one of the centerpiece films of this effort of his. It's called Ali Fear Eats the Soul. And its plot is based on a Cirque film, Hollywood film called All That Heaven Allows. And that was a film with a story about an older woman who falls in love with a younger man. And it was kind of showed how society reacted. So Fassbinder takes this story and pushes it to an extreme. He takes a much, much older woman. In the Hollywood film, it's a woman who's probably in her late 40s who falls for a man in his early 30s, maybe about 15 years difference. Here, the woman is in her 60s, and the man she falls in love with is in his 20s, maybe early 30s, and he's African, Arab, black. And this, of course, sparks a response among the community around her. And this film becomes sort of an analysis of what happens, how societies deal with prejudices and judgment and that sort of thing. And it's very interesting against the backdrop of Germany, considering that it was a country that enacted some of the most foul atrocities against humanity in this vein that have ever occurred. So watch the film. I hope you enjoy it. I find it to be a very beautiful and touching film. And if you're a film buff, you might take note that the cinematographer on this film was a man named Michael Bauhaus, who later went on to become the main cinematographer for Martin Scorsese in a number of his most important films, starting back in the late 80s with After Hours and Goodfellas, and extending through his Hollywood, his Academy Award-winning film. Well, I forget the name of it, but into the 2000s, he made a lot of his really big, very cinematically aggressive films. So, in your response, I want you to analyze the film, think about what it says about society, how we judge one another, how we accept one another, and that sort of thing. And what do you think of this idea of film being a way to critically assess society, and in particular using the melodramatic form as a way to criticize society? Do you think it's effective? And if so, how? What about it? And what does that say about the human experience? All right. Well, happy viewing, everyone. Have fun. And I look forward to reading your responses as always. Thank you.